good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, you thirsty bunch of beer drinkers, whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. Thanks for pressing play on another episode of Between Two Fermenters, a podcast brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, your local Ontario brewery. So I don't know what we're going to get up to today. There was this announcement made by the Premier of Ontario recently about speeding up the timeline for convenience and big box stores to sell beer, wine, ciders, and RTDs. For those keeping score, RTDs means that's ready to drink cocktails. It's no big deal, right? This announcement. We will adapt on the fly. Craft breweries always do that. Instead of early 2026, convenience stores will be able to get product on shelves by September 5th, 2024. There never seems to be a dull moment in craft beer. Late in the evening on May 23rd, some rumors were circulating that the government, led by the Premier, would be holding a press conference in the morning focusing on an expedited alcohol retail system in Ontario. To my astonishment, many media contacts were not made aware of what was taking place. But there was one fella who did. That's Scott Simmons, the president of the OCB. That's the Ontario Craft Brewers Association. Simmons was not only aware, but he had some inside knowledge of what was going to be announced and that he would be in attendance for the news. He's my guest today on the show, but before we get to him, let's unpack some of what Doug Ford and Peter Bethlenfalvy, did I get that right, Scott?
Sure did.
Had to say. August 1st, 2024, grocery stores with an existing license to sell alcohol will be permitted to sell RTD and large pack sizes of beer. And all retailers, including grocery, C-stores, and TBS, that's the beer store, will be required to maintain 20% shelf space for craft beer. On September 5th, as I mentioned, convenience stores will be able to sell beer, wine, cider, and RTDs. On October 31st, 2024, new grocery stores and big box stores will be permitted to sell beer, wine, cider, and RTDs. So that's a big deal. And the LCBO will provide a 10% discount from the LCBO basic retail price to retailer purchasing wholesale. So yes, the LCBO will be the wholesaler of the beer, and they'll give back the 10% discount, or it will be a 10% discount. The beer store will continue to operate the deposit return system until at least 2031, and some grocery stores will need to accept empties. That'll be interesting to see what happens with that. TBS will receive what's been said to be $225 million from the government, a number, like I said, being debated in the legislative assembly right now to assist in stable transition and to keep locations open to continue that recycling deposit system. And the beer store will also need to keep at least 300 of their existing 440 stores or so open until January 1st, 2026. So those are some of the big highlights. And here are some of the others that got buried in the details. Retailers are prohibited from charging brewers listing fees, promotional fees, or allowing trade spend. Craft brewers can continue using third-party distributors, can distribute with other craft breweries, and use TBS even if products aren't sold in stores. So that's a big one. We're hearing in the media a lot that TBS will be the distributor of record for beer, when in fact, craft brewers can still use their own distribution or third-party distributors. And preventing TBS from imposing minimum order quantities on craft brewers if a craft brewer chooses TBS as a distributor. Also a big thing for the small craft brewers. So that was the longest intro I think we've ever had on the show, and it's time for me to crack a Great Lakes Lager, my official beer of summer, and we're going to hear a word from our sponsors, and then right after that we're going to get into it with Scott Simmons, president of the OCB.
Toronto's Festival of Beer returns to Bandshell Park at Exhibition Place between July 26th and 28th. Come to TFOB and enjoy the best of beer and beverage, showcasing over 400 varieties of products, the best of bites, eats, treats, and more. And the best beats on the Bandshell stage, including headliners Cypress Hill, Josh Ross, Taking Back Sunday, all rocking the Bandshell stage. Don't judge, just enjoy. TFOB, July 26th to 28th. Tickets available at beerfestival.ca.
All right, so every episode I'm telling you to go in and buy your TFOB tickets before they're gone. Listen to Cypress Hill and those other guys. Welcome to the show, Scott Simmons, president of the OCB. I brought you a Sunnyside Session IPA because I know you don't like to play favorites, but that's your favorite, right?
It's my favorite today, Troy.
There you go. Snap her open.
Love that sound.
It's, when I got married, that was the best day of my life, hearing the I do from my wife. But the second best sound ever is a beer opening. What the hell are we going to talk about today?
I don't know. Do you have anything to fill in the, uncomfortable gaps?
There was not really much going on in the industry in the last 2 weeks, unless you have been sleeping under a rock. So like I said, in the intro, there's a lot to unpack today. But before we get to all that, let's paint a picture of who Scott Simmons is. So can you tell the listeners who you are, where'd you come from, and what's your story?
Well, I'm vintage, a little bit older probably than most of your listeners, but grew up in the great town of Brantford, Ontario.
I just want to cut you off. Our listeners are just like our beer drinkers, our consumers. They're 19 years old until they're still, they're still breathing. So we have no age demographic here.
Well, that's a very good point. I grew up in the telephone city, Brantford, Ontario, during the Wayne Gretzky era. So got to witness that, got to play on a few of his teams and see those exploits. He did a little better than I did in sports, but that was my childhood. Went to Western to the Richard Ivey School of Business. Launched a career from there. Started at Procter & Gamble. I spent 7 or 8 years in sales and marketing there. Had a little tenure at IMG, the sports management company, doing their Canadian sales. And then I've spent the last 30 years or so in the golf and beer business. So I've kind of gone back and forth. I spent 7 years as a senior vice president at the beer store head office. The last 10 years I've been, before this job, was the CEO of Golf Canada, so keeping an eye on the leaderboard at Hamilton this week for the RBC Canadian Open. And the last 7 years have been fantastic years, trying to fill the big shoes of John Hay as president of the Ontario Craft Brewers Association.
It's really been 7 years?
7 years this August. It's hard to believe.
It really is hard to believe. I can remember the first real Ontario Craft Brewers conferences when John would get up there, and I love John Hay. He's an amazing guy, but he would spew out numbers and just put us to sleep first thing in the morning for those OCB conferences. But he did a lot in the early days for the OCB, and the association was founded in 2003 as the Ontario Small Brewers Association. A lot's changed in that time since you've come on. Can you walk us through a little bit about who the OCB is and what it stands for?
Sure. And when I was at the beer store head office, I actually met John and about a dozen of the craft brewers in Ontario, and that might have been all the craft brewers in Ontario at that time of 2002. We're talking about 22 years ago. And John came in with the likes of Cam Heaps, Steam Whistle, Mike Stirrup, Wellington, Gary McMullen, Muskoka, Mike Arnold, Trafalgar, and so on. And probably Peter. I don't remember Peter, which is hard to believe because he's a memorable guy. But we chatted about how small brewers, craft brewers, and the beer store could do more together. And so I got to know John and got to know him. Little did I know that years later I would be taking his job. But when he announced his retirement, I had been at Golf Canada for 10 years, and I loved the beer business, and I wanted to get back in. So put my hat in the ring, and here I am. But the OCB was founded to really be the voice of Ontario craft beer, primarily from an advocacy point of view. This is a highly regulated industry. Everything is regulated. So, within our industry, there are things in every ministry that affect us, primarily the Ministry of Finance, of course, but we talk to the Premier's office, the Attorney General, the Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of Small Business, OMAFRA, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of the Environment. We did some things a couple of years ago that you're aware of to change some of the EASA rules, et cetera. But literally, we talk to every government agency, and we are the only group that's really doing that on behalf of small brewers. And as you know, we've gone from, let's say, those 12 brewers who met me at TBS 22 years ago to now arguably 340 bricks and mortar craft breweries in Ontario. So the industry has really grown. It's significant in its size, jobs, economic impact. And obviously, through your intro, there are a lot of issues affecting the future of our industry, and that's really our role. There's a lot of other things we do, run the conference, et cetera, but really it's about advocacy.
and a lot of people have, chimed in that, armchair quarterbacks over the years that have said, like, you should be more public facing and more about the tourism and more about awareness of craft beer. And I think in the early days, that's what the OCB really went for. They went for the marketing dollars from the government to do the beer trails and videos. But we've shifted more into the advocacy for regulations and law. Were you part of that switch, or did you see it already evolving to that when you came on 7 years ago?
Well, again, it's a longer story than I have time to give you, but when I was interviewing for the role, I was told that the OCB had been the benefactor, thanks to John, of $1 million marketing grant for, 5 to 10 years. And that's the money John used to do all those things you were talking about. That grant, we were told, was going to expire and not be renewed. So the people interviewing me wanted me to be aware of that. So when I started, our budget was a much smaller budget and still is, quite frankly. So we had to make some choices. I would love to do all those things that you just spoke of, but you have to make choices with the limited dollars you have. And we have focused on advocacy because that is really what matters to the brewers. The brewers do a great job of marketing the industry themselves. And when you take 340 voices and multiply that by your social presence, etc., you do a great job. We do have craft brewery trails on our website. I'm pretty proud of our website. We have a great website. We have now a Canadian Craft Brewers Association, of which I sit on the board of. So we'd love to do all those things, and we still have a thought in the back of our head that we can do them in the future. But a little shout out to the non-members listening. We have 126 members of 340 in Ontario. And if we had more membership, we would have the dollars and the ability to hire more people to do those things. But we're a pretty small yet powerful shop right now.
And we're going to come back to the membership. Okay. We're going to kind of finesse this weave our way through this spider web of things that are going on with the OCB and politics, and then get to why the hell are you not a member if you're operating in this province. But so current battles. So you mentioned the OCB as an advocacy group. What are the big current battles? Let's leave retail out for now, but you guys ran a very successful campaign this past summer 2023. So maybe just walk us through the current battles that you're sitting in front of government with.
Yeah, there's two major battles. If you want to talk about retail later, we can do that. The other major battle is tax, and it's a big story to unpack, but a lot of people think that the microbrewery tax rate that came in, I believe, 2008, somewhere thereabouts, is really all our industry needs. It's a long answer. I'll give you a short one. These are small businesses we're talking about, these 340 businesses. So even the microbrewery tax rate isn't enough to put them on a fair playing field. There's a lot of problems with it. Even though there is a microbrewery tax rate, it's a flat tax. So a brewer that makes 1,000 hex is paying the same tax as a brewer that makes 45,000 hex. There is a huge scale difference between 1,000 and 45,000.
Massive.
Just as we know there's a even bigger scale difference between 45,000 and someone the size of Molson and Labatt. Like, you can't even describe how big that gap is. So this government supports small businesses. We've got a great relationship with this government, but we're trying to educate them on the fact that the tax system is far too punitive. And when you look at our tax system, compared to Alberta, BC, even surrounding U.S. border states, we are so much higher than those states that I believe that it makes us uncompetitive in a lot of ways. And you just need to look at the numbers. You talk about John Hay spewing numbers. Well, I'll give you a couple. Craft in Ontario is approximately 11% of all beer volume.
Which is way too low.
If you look at Alberta, it's 18, I believe. BC is 29. If you look at Vermont, it's 40. Michigan is higher. I don't have the number in front of me. New York State is higher. Pennsylvania is higher. Ohio is higher.
Well, a lot of the states, I think it's higher too because they have an open market.
Well, and I'm trying to not talk about retail right now, but there's two problems. I'm simplifying, but two problems holding back our industry: the tax structure and the retail structure. And so that's tax. So
the tax, for those keeping score at home, we pay for a brewery 0 to 49,000 hex. You're paying the same rate per hectoliter, and that's when the OCB did the math on the small brewers, the basic beer tax, the
volume tax, the can tax.
It all equals up to about $79.
$79 a heck, and
BC or
Alberta is $10.
$10
at the smallest end of the scale. So think about that for a second.
Huge
on
difference.
what that is per case. It's complicated.
Not even per case, just for per tank. Think about just per tank.
We don't have time for me to tell you everything I feel about it, but the fact that it's so complicated as well, there's those three taxes, basic, volume, can tax. And then once you get above 49,000, there is this complicated rebate system called the Small Brewers Manufacturers Rebate that is so complicated. So one of our pillars to government is, why is it so complicated? Get rid of three taxes, make one, lower them right across the board, make it more progressive like federal excise, where let's say a brewer grows from 2,000 hex to 80,000 hex 10 years from now, like unbelievable success story. You would still pay the lower tax on your first 2,000 hectoliters, just like everybody else. The way it works now, an 80,000 hect brewery is paying a massive amount of tax on all 80,000 hex.
That's correct. Yeah.
So there's no incentive to grow.
At the provincial level, just to be clear.
At the provincial level, yes. We just as an aside, I sit on the board of the Canadian Craft Brewers Association, and we were proud of what we accomplished in February. We had excise tax cut in half for the first 15,000 hex. Now, federal tax, quite frankly, isn't our problem here in Ontario. For the low end, they're lower than provincial rates, far lower to begin with. But look, 50% cut is great. I was told yesterday, if you're at 15,000 hex, it's going to save you $80,000. Don't quote me on that number. I thought it was a bit lower, but it's significant. So anyway, yes, we're fighting federal excise. In fact, our executive director is going to Ottawa shortly to talk about increasing that threshold higher than 15,000. But today we're talking about provincial tax.
Yeah. And go into detail on the can tax, because I do a lot of media, and this is the one sticking point that people, once they understand that we're the only industry that pays this 9-cent environmental can tax. No other pop doesn't, soups, energy drinks, no one does, but alcohol. So maybe just walk us through what that is.
Yeah, we call it a can tax, but in full disclosure, it's really on every non-refillable alcohol container. So, wine bottles would pay it as well. But when you look at 9 cents on a $3.75 can of beer, the percentage is much higher than it is on a wine or whiskey bottle. So really we focus on that. And you're right. Every other aluminum can, whether you're soft drinks or anything else, they don't pay it. And what really rubs salt in the wound is during COVID, when you lost all your draft business, which is the lowest tax you pay.
So that's another thing.
And all converted.
We pay tax on packaged product and draft product.
It's I go back to what
fees.
It is. I go back to what I said a few minutes ago about the system being too complicated. We're advocating for one rate for all beer. But anyway, I digress. So you go back to COVID. Let's say a brewery did 50% draft and you lost all that. Now, thank goodness, consumers still wanted craft beer and they ordered it to their homes. But how's it being delivered to homes? In cans. Your tax doubled during a worldwide pandemic. So as if you didn't have enough problems. So we have hammered government with this fact that the can tax is too punitive.
And the LCBO, whether they say it or not, cans are the preferred method of purchase, of sale. And they have moved that way since 2006 when Devil's Pale Ale first came out. And so you get all these craft breweries now putting everything in cans, and you see it happening in the U.S. more and more. Bottles are going away. And the whole premise of this can tax or environmental levy was to prevent cans from coming in from the big brewers from the U.S. back in the 1980s. And so has there been any traction with this whatsoever with policymakers?
Yeah, again, it's a lot to unpack, but I'll give you the simple version. So we were pushing very hard just to have the can tax eliminated in this past spring budget of the provincial government. They said to us they understand our position and don't disagree, but they don't want to do piecemeal fixes to the tax, which is actually good news for everybody listening, because They truly believe that we do need major reform. And if we get all the things that I mentioned a few minutes ago, the can tax kind of goes away anyway. If it's one tax and it's far lower,
get it down to like $10 up until
it's not a problem anymore. So we've stopped focusing on eliminating can tax as like the idea. And now it's about major reform. And as part of the announcement on December 14th, and again last Friday, the government committed to do a complete review of our taxes and have it done by the end of this calendar year. So we're in the midst of that. Just before I came on this call, I was sending a letter to the Minister of Finance with our proposal. We've done detailed quantitative analysis and sent them a specific spreadsheet with the proposal of tax rates for every volume category.
So just like you mentioned, it just like in the federal excise, there's a progressive scale. You go from 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 and onwards. And so is that what the OCB is pushing, a more progressive scale like that, or just one rate up until a certain threshold?
It's all of the above. So lower taxes across the board, get rid of 3 different taxes, get rid of the small brewers manufacturers rebate, get rid of it all. Just have one tax, have far lower rates and make them, call it progressive.
And would the big brewers apply for that within their first whatever volume?
That's to be determined.
Okay.
The government may decide.
Because federally, that's what's happened as well.
Yes, that's what happens federally. Provincially, the definition of a small brewer is 300,000 hex and under.
And you know what it is in Canada? 75.
75.
Isn't that not crazy?
That's not the definition per se, but that's when you reach max excise rates.
Yes.
Which is another just ridiculous fact.
Federally, if you get up to 76,000 hectoliters a year, you're paying the exact same rate that now the Anheuser-Busch InBev at 6 million.
It's a good point because provincially you reach the max at 200,000 hectoliters, which is better than 75, but it's still too low.
Yes.
So
other provinces are higher.
Yes. They're like, one of the elements of our proposal is not to hit max tax rates until you get closer to 400,000 or 500,000. So there's a lot of elements to our proposal, but they all make sense. And it's what the industry needs to be able to compete. And I know you don't want to talk about retail, but
we're going to get there.
I'll segue this way. All these changes, which we're about to talk about, they're not easy. And craft brewers need to be able to invest in the change to be able to compete. Right now, craft brewers do not have the capital to invest. And that is our story about tax change to government. You need to make this change now so that craft brewers have time to compete and invest. And the fact that they've accelerated the timeline complicates things. But
Great Lakes is a pretty on top of it brewery when it comes to these political announcements and knowing what's happening. We work really well with you and the association. We were blindsided too. We knew that there was a sea of change coming and maybe a little earlier. Didn't expect it to come this early. And every damn announcement this government makes on the booze file, it always happens when I'm away on vacation. Always happens. No matter where I'm at, I'll get a phone call from 640 or the CBC saying, do you want to comment? But I got to say, the OCB did a great job of getting out ahead of the announcement this year with all the not press release, but here are the talking points and here are some things that are going to be announced. So,
well, we were in to see the Premier. I met with Premier Ford, Minister Bethlen Falvey on May 2nd, and they hinted that they wanted an accelerated timeline. I didn't think it would be as fast as it was. And then we were on a briefing call last Thursday night before
to find out
the announcement, and the Premier invited me to join him Friday morning at the announcement. So we had a little bit of a heads up, but I think all of us were shocked at how fast they want to go.
So you're talking about size of these breweries, and we have the 200,000 hec and federally 75, and some provinces are 400,000 hec. Do you think we'll ever see a brewery in Ontario scale up that size?
Not today.
Yeah.
But that's what the problem is with tax. And I could give you a specific example, but maybe I'd be giving too much information, confidential information about some breweries that have recently merged. But right now, go back to the way I explained the tax. If you're at X thousand hectoliters today and merge with a brewery at 2x thousand hectoliters.
If you're at 47,000 hex.
Okay, let's use exact numbers. Let's say a 40,000 hect brewery who's paying the microbrewery tax merges with another 40,000 hect brewery.
Yep.
Now you're 80. You lose the benefit of that microbrewery tax on the first 40,000 because you're now being taxed at the 80,000 rate. So there's been some examples of that in the last couple of years in our industry, which either scuttled mergers and acquisitions or severely impaired their ability to happen. And we've told government about that too, because this industry really is founded on small business. But this government is about efficiency. And we used to talk about our industry being romantically inefficient, which it is. We don't use that language anymore because while we will always be hundreds of small businesses, there's nothing wrong with those businesses trying to work better together to lower their costs, become more efficient. At some point, maybe it doesn't become craft, but we don't have time to get into that today. But there's nothing wrong with our businesses. Every business, regardless of mergers, wants to be more efficient. They want to lower their costs, increase their profits.
And it seems based on the retail outlet or retail market until this announcement, but it seems over the past, we had that big boom from 2012 to 2016, 17. People were opening production facilities. Now it seems everyone, if people do open, and it's few and far between, but they're focusing on tap room and local first. And that's kind of the backwards way that craft used to be, 20 years ago. And do you think that's because of the retail environment, the tax environment, or is it just people have lower ambitions based on the retail market?
I think it's all of it. I think if you're opening a craft brewery, you have to become successful inside the brewery and out your front door first. And if you can't be successful at that, I wouldn't recommend trying to expand to retail and do it too quickly or too broadly. The retail market isn't for everyone. If you run your business right and you're in the right community, you can make a good living just out your front door. But obviously, you want to capitalize on retail and licensees, but you have to do it strategically. And there isn't a cookie cutter approach. Every craft brewery in this province is different. They're in different communities. There's different issues. But generally speaking, you need to be successful out your front door. And I've heard a lot of people say there's too many breweries in Ontario now.
We won't say what brewery said that.
I respectfully disagree. This is a big province. We have 340. We have less breweries per capita than any other region you want to look at. I'm not saying we could have hundreds more, especially at retail, because that's a different issue. Yep. But there's a lot of room for community brewers, right? If you do it right and you have population clusters and urban centers, just look at downtown Toronto, the successful craft breweries that exist where there's a ton of population in their neighborhood. But it's different in every community. But at 340, I still respectfully think we're a little bit underdeveloped. But the retail market, which let's talk about now, makes it a challenge.
We at Great Lakes, we made a conscious decision years ago that we're going to focus on Ontario. It's a huge backyard, and we want to keep the beer fresh. And then grocery opened up and said, okay, let's get our beer in the grocery stores. Let's focus on the LCBO. Let's do a little bit more with TBS. Let's work on our footprint at Etobicoke and then open a brew pub. And that I don't think is going to change for the foreseeable future, even with this new, or with the expansion of retail. It's just going to actually help. But we saw a number of breweries exporting their product because they had nowhere else to sell the product. They got to a certain, I'm in 600 LCBOs, I'm in 300 beer stores, which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm in all these bars, but now what? They have nowhere to grow. So they've moved to other provinces or into other countries. Do you think the new retail system will allow those beers that have kind of grown outside the Ontario borders to kind of come back and be that Ontario, focused? Or do you think this is just a cherry on top of what they've already set up?
Well, that's the theory, or we wouldn't have been advocating for it, but let me be perfectly clear. There's a lot of good things about the current system. There's a lot of bad things about the current system.
Why don't you enlighten us?
These retail systems are set up for big companies. Let's be honest. The beer store is set up to service bigger companies. One of the challenges with the beer store, and, I have great friends still on staff from my time working there, and former staff, and the current staff are great people.
The president is a great guy.
He is, and I'm meeting with him next week. But anytime you have the major retailer still responsible for 60% of the beer sales in this province owned by your competitors, it's a challenge. If you look at the LCBO, great relationship with the LCBO. It's the primary channel for craft beer. But I personally believe that their system and processes to list any new product is detrimental to craft beer in Ontario. The time it takes for label review and product review, I personally respectfully believe that's not the job of the LCBO. It doesn't happen in any other retail footprint. Do you think Loblaws is testing the peanut butter and toothpaste before it goes on the shelf? No, they're not. It's a CFIA job and the job of the manufacturer to be compliant with laws and regulations. So I respect the LCBO for doing it. They're a first-class retailer, but it poses challenges to our industry. Grocery is set up. When I was working for Procter & Gamble, selling Tide laundry detergent, they want to set their planogram once a year and be done with it. That doesn't work for local craft beer. Local craft beer is built on seasonals, fast rotation, new products. Big grocery isn't built to do that. So those are the challenges. The good thing about the current system, it's a limited footprint. So, your distribution costs are theoretically lower. I've said many times that this new system, where we're going from arguably 2,000 outlets to 10,000 outlets, is not going to grow the total beer sold in Ontario. So why are we advocating for it?
So
Because the theory is that you want to grow the craft share of total beer. Because make no mistakes about it, this new world is going to impose increased cost on craft brewers, especially distribution. So the only way we win is if we can grow that 11 share I talked about earlier to somewhere close to Alberta at 18. Is that going to happen? I don't know. You don't know. But we're making an educated gamble to support the new system.
So got all that. Now, what are some of the challenges that you're anticipating with the new system?
Well, in no particular order, TBS, we'll see how distribution works. I mean, some of the things we've been advocating for, which TBS has been good to, work with us on. Distribution going forward, they need to distribute all craft brewer products, regardless of whether they're listed at their retail stores, which I've been pushing for a couple of years.
And with no minimum.
With no minimums. I mean, we're still working through, let's be clear, there's a lot we still don't know. Like, we have got to advocate and learn over the next couple of months with government, and they're starting the consultation process literally this week.
Yep.
But yes, with TBS, we have to understand there's no minimums on craft beer products, but there's minimums on what they will ship to a particular retailer licensee. So we've got to understand how that's going to work and how rates are going to work.
In the fine print right now, for a licensee delivery, it's $1,500.
Yeah, and that came up a couple of months ago.
That's right.
Which was a new policy. So you've got to look for, little landmines like that. The LCBO, one of the things that we've talked to government about, the review process. I respect the LCBO for doing it, but if we're going to go to 10,000 retail outlets, the vast majority aren't listed at the LCBO. So somehow we have to have a new approval process, if we need any approval process at all, to be listed in their catalog. Because I think you referenced earlier that every sale going forward to a retail outlet or even licensees is going to have to go through the LCBO portal, I'll call it.
Say that again, licensee too?
We're digging into that. There is language that would lead
licensee, for the listeners who aren't in beer, that's on premise, so that's bars and restaurants.
Yeah. So we're not clear on that. The language was unclear, but that's one of the things we need to unpack. Now,
that would be huge, though. That would be as big as a shift.
Well, let's just. I'm going to get back to that, but So that's one of the challenges with the LCBO. There's more. There's good things about the LCBO, to be clear. Grocery, the planograms I talked about earlier, like the ability to get on shelves, and with convenience. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's fragmented. There's a ton of locations, small volume. Your distribution costs are going to go up. How are the chains going to manage the planograms? We were successful in advocating for a minimum 20% Ontario craft beer, but you might see the C stores, I hope not, take the top 5, 6 Ontario craft brewers, do their planograms, and be done with it. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that there's some wiggle room for local craft, because that's where we have to win, where craft breweries in Windsor are able to get listed at their local C-stores, and there's going to be a lot of them. London, same thing. Ottawa, Thunder Bay, Barrie.
No, I'm talking to the two presidents of both associations, convenience stores. You know, they've told us that they are, and this is them saying it, that they really want the stores in the regions to focus on the local beers. So they don't want a plethora of Toronto beers in Windsor. They would rather have showcasing the Windsor beers. And now, that's what they say.
I've heard that from the Ontario Craft Convenience Store Association, who primarily work with the independents.
Yes.
Which is true. But I'd like to sit down with the chains. And see what their plans are, because that's going to make a huge impact on our industry, and that's one of the things I said we still have to unpack. You mentioned the LCBO portal. The one good thing, theoretically, and we're, again, digging into this, is if every order has to go through that system, you're going to get paid right away. Mm-hmm. And we all know of the AR problems with certain retailers, and especially some licensees. So that's what I say. The new system isn't perfect. There's some good, there's some bad. But when you weigh the scales, if you put the old system, current system, and the new system on the scales, we believe the new system is better, but it certainly has issues that we at the OCB need to work on.
And hopefully with some, budget 2025 tax relief, a little bit more money to go back and to invest in, distribution, to get into these new stores. We were talking to someone earlier today at the brewery, and they were saying, we're staffing up. We're getting ready. Like 15 new staff are coming on just to handle the potential. And what is the potential? We don't know yet. We have to find out on Monday what it actually looks like. So there is a lot of moving pieces with the whole announcement that was made last Friday, or on the 24th. But what's the OCB doing behind the scenes to help the member breweries get ready for this? So you're doing the advocacy, but what's the next step? Has there been a plan identified?
Not a detailed plan, but obviously we want to, as you know, you were on the call. We had all members on a call Friday afternoon after the announcement to unpack what we knew, what we didn't know, what we're working on. We'll continue to do that. I'd hope to have other town halls and perhaps in-person meetings over the summer. We've got the conference, of course, in November, where hopefully we can have some sessions on this. So we're going to do our best to make sure breweries are, educated and aware of the changes, and we're going to do our best to give them tools to help them. One point on distribution. Right now, there's a lot of handcuffs and red tape on who you can use to distribute. The good news is that's all going away. Mm-hmm. The challenge, who wants to distribute all our products throughout Ontario? We don't have time to get into it, but there's TBS, there's TNG. You've got current distributors that service C-stores like Cormark. Mm-hmm. I'm talking to all of them, as I'm sure our members are. But we've got to figure that out. That is a huge issue for this new world distribution.
So when the MFA goes away, which sounds like in September or August 31st, whatever that date is, anyone can distribute beer? Is that what we're hearing? Yeah.
Yes, and craft brewers have maintained, we fought for this hard. Yep. Craft brewers, anyone under 150,000 hex still has the right to self-distribute. So what that means is even if every order has to go through the LCBO portal, mm-hmm. you can still deliver it directly.
So how much does it chap your ass to hear and see every media report saying TBS is going to be the distributor for all these stores?
Well, it's just another example. When something this major happens, there's going to be a lot of miscommunication mm-hmm. and mistakes made. You ask, what are we going to do with the OCB? We're going to try to make sure everybody understands what the facts are and what the rules are.
So you touched on the conference. You touched on making sure members are all abreast of what's happening. So walk us through an OCB membership. Tell us what you get for signing up. The whole thing, give me a sales pitch.
Well, at the highest level, and we talked about this earlier, the more members we have, the more scale the OCB has to help all of you. There is a minimum fee to join, $495 a year, and then there's a per hectoliter fee on top of that for as you grow. I think they're very fair. I personally think, and of course I'm biased, that you actually make money when you join the OCB. But from a qualitative perspective, you should just be joining the OCB to be part of the movement. Mm-hmm. Like, we're all in this together. And the OCB isn't perfect. I'll be the first to admit that. But we're the only game in town for craft breweries. And you talked about misinformation a minute ago. I laugh at some of the things I hear about the OCB, the things that come up that are absolutely not true.
You guys only work for the big brewers.
Oh boy. Well, let's not even get into that one.
You only have to have beer in the LCBO.
But thanks to people like you, Troy, and I'm not pumping your tires here,
good.
But the brewers really don't want to hear from me, and I get that. They respect you and your peers a lot more. So I've been very, very happy to see people like you and many others talk to non-members and educate them so that they have the facts. And you know, you and I were on a call earlier. We've got 30 new members since we did the Keep Craft Beer Local campaign, and every one of them said, I had no idea what you really do. I had a perception that was totally wrong. I am so glad I joined. I have some of them running for the board now. So do not believe in the rumors you hear. Call me. And I'm going to do.
You're going to do it?
I'm going to do a premier thing.
I was waiting for him.
Here's my cell phone: 416-427-1490. Call me directly for the facts. So there you go.
Yeah, we were on that call earlier. Willibald, Capsoff, Parsons, Grove, Bellwoods, Blood Brothers, Anderson, Fairweather, Grain and Grit. We have Mascot, Beyond the Pale, Red Barn, Slake. The list goes on, and it's been...
If I could clone myself, I'd do more regional town halls. I did one in London back in February, I think, at Anderson.
Yep.
We got a bunch of new members after that meeting for the same reasons I just alluded to. People went, I had no idea. So for all of you non-members, give me a call. We need you.
But now now that you're done your infomercial or whatever, the pledge-a-thon stuff, why do you think more breweries just don't sign? Like, what is it that?
Well,
is it time? Is it?
Yeah. In fairness, you work at a craft brewery. Mm-hmm. Most craft breweries are small, run by 1, 2, 3 people.
Yep.
These people, I have so much respect for. They have put their life on the line, invested their life savings. They're brewing the beer. They're driving the truck. They're at the retail store.
I'm going to cut off your argument because I know you're going with this, but then why don't you invest in having someone do the advocacy on your behalf?
We don't have the money for the reason I mentioned earlier. If we had more members, I could hire a couple of people. But
no. I'm saying from the brewery perspective, hey, I'm a 1, 2, 3 person operation. I don't have time to advocate for tax change for retail. Why not put the trust in the OCB?
Well, yeah, if we could get everybody,
that's what I'm saying.
if we could get everybody to drink that Kool-Aid, I'd be very happy. But I totally respect people for not being members. They're too busy. But hopefully sessions like this, and it's not an infomercial. It's not an infomercial at all. We are here to help you. And by having your support of the association, it's only going to help you going forward. And you don't have to do anything. And we probably don't have time to get into the benefits. I said earlier that for $495, you will instantly actually make money, whether it's being part of the LCBO program, whether it's discount on conference tickets. You become a free member of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business at no charge, which I can't tell you the testimonials I've had from some members that said that might be the best member benefit you have. So there's more, but you've got my cell. Call me. I'll fill you in.
I like the Mark's Work Warehouse discount.
Well, that too.
There we go. So what does the board makeup look like as it currently stands?
Yeah. So without getting into kind of the
minutia.
Yeah. Like most people think we just support the bigger craft brewers. 80% of the board is small brewers.
Under 15.
Yeah. We have board members categorized into different size segments. So 4 from the 0 to 5,000 category, 4 from the 5 to 15, 3 are from the 15 to 40, and only 2 right now are 3 in the 40 plus. So we have a board of 14. We just met yesterday in Collingwood. Great people, and I couldn't do my job without them. Really supportive board.
And that is the biggest misconception, I would say, right now, right? Is that you work for only the bigger breweries. If you could pick one, what is the biggest misconception about what the OCB does?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it, or that we're not worth joining. So hopefully I've said a few things in the last half hour that would convince you otherwise. But our annual general meeting is coming up June 12th at Left Field Brewery, the new one in Liberty Village. So you're welcome to attend if you're a member. And then, of course, the conference. We're going to talk about the conference.
We're going to talk about the conference. But when it comes to the misconceptions about the OCB, maybe walk us through some of the wins that have happened in the last, you've been here 7 years, but in the last 5 years, there have been very significant wins that are, maybe small to some, but they impact every brewery of all size in this province. So, like retail, we can stay open, or we can open earlier, we can close later. That's a huge benefit for small breweries and local communities. Pint sizes, we can serve pint sizes now. It's no longer by the glass of 12 ounces. So is there a couple other things that you can just kind of wrap off that the OCB has been very instrumental in?
Yeah, there is a lot. So, you can be forgiven if you've missed them in the media, but there's about 10 or 15 things, at least, like you just mentioned, that, quite frankly, help smaller brewers.
Home delivery.
Home delivery, yes. Farmers markets.
Farmers markets.
The federal excise. Mm-hmm. Getting that cut up to 15,000 hectoliters.
I'm on the coalition of the Canadian Independent Craft Breweries, so we helped with that as well too. I got to put that plug in for our little group.
Yeah, no, we've got a great tandem there between the CCBA and the coalition. We've made some great progress in Ottawa, but Troy, there's probably too many to mention.
Yeah, and I'm trying to rack my brain because I like to keep track of all these things, but it seemed like there was a flurry at one point where they were just coming. And I would say to people that weren't members of the OCB, I'm like, you're going to benefit from this, but you know who did all the work? This is all your OCB. These are the people that you're saying are too big. Like, this whole organization is just, or association is this for the big breweries, but the big breweries are doing this in conjunction with the smallest breweries on the board to get change for all of the industry.
We have 126 members. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but at least 100 are under 3,000 hex.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's talk about the conference. Let's skip right over to November 6th and 7th. We're in Hamilton this year. I'm back in a very small co-chair, small role this year. But we've got our keynote speakers in Ted Nolan and Ben Edmonds. So that's really exciting. But walk us through the whole conference, because it is really the best and biggest conference in suppliers marketplace in Canada beer.
Yeah, I'm really proud of it. I've been involved, of course, for 7 years, but the conference, I believe, is 12 years old. This is 12th
annual, yeah.
It's 2 days, November 6th and 7th at the Hamilton Convention Center. We've got a great lineup of speakers, keynotes. And thank you, Troy, for the work you did to line up our keynotes. We had a call this morning.
Yep.
And Jeff Talmy from Town Brewery, thanks for his help. But we've got too many great offers for education sessions. We talked this morning. We're going to do a lot on everything we've just talked about. Mm-hmm. We're going to do some sessions on what's happening at convenience, grocery. We'll obviously have our friends in from TBS and LCBO again to talk about that. It's really the best 2 days you could ever invest for industry education. And then on top of the kind of softer benefits, like just networking with your peers,
There's
talking to your peers.
There's a lot of beer in the supplier marketplace.
One of the great things about our conference, I've heard, is we provide all the food. And beer. People go to other conferences and they get nickel and dimed for their lunches, which are crap. We have great food, and our prices are lower than other conferences because
the food last year was dynamite.
While the profits from the conference help run the OCB, I've said this many times, we try to make the ticket price for members as low as possible just to cover our costs. Mm-hmm. We want you there. But education and then the social aspect, we talked about that this morning. We've got a great opening party lined up at Clifford Brewery. We're talking to some suppliers about a big party on the Wednesday night, November 6th. And then our great friends at Collective Arts in Hamilton, we are going to have a party to end all parties on the closing night, November 7th. So on top of the actual business benefits, we have a lot of fun. So look at our website, OntarioCraftBrewers.com. Information is on there about everything we've talked about today, plus the conference, and I'll leave it at that.
It really is an amazing conference, and it's literally the best way to meet brewers from all over the province. And across Canada, actually, we don't generate, but we bring in a lot of people we've had people from Nunavut, we've had people from BC, Michigan, well, every province, essentially, we've had people come to the conference, and it's just a great celebration of craft beer, of independent business, and it's all under one roof. And there's my soapbox.
There's 140 suppliers. We didn't mention that. So the trade show, marketplace, you can get a lot of business done there. And you could probably, if we had more time, give me examples of suppliers you've met, deals you've done, money you've saved. And we get about 1,000 attendees. So it is the highest attended, probably the biggest trade show of any beer conference in Canada.
And one of the best things to do for all new brewers, if anyone out there from a new brewery, you come to the show, if there's a particular piece of equipment you're looking for, buy it on site. Buy it from them, because they don't want to take it home. Just figure out how you can get it back to your respective brewery. So we're going to go to an ad, and then when we come back, Scott, are you going to want to stick around for some rapid fire questions? Perfect.
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's go to an ad, Great Lakes Lager, I believe. And when we come back, I got 5 questions for Scott that he's going to cringe over when I ask. Stay tuned.
There appears to be only one line on this sheet. $50 for a case of Great Lakes Premium Lager. That's it? That's the ad? Okay. Cases of Great Lakes Premium Lager are only $50 every day of the year.
Every time I hear that ad, it makes me want to crack open a fresh Great Lakes Lager. Okay, Scott, we're back with some rapid fire questions for you. Other than the Sunny Side that's in your hand, what beer have you been enjoying recently?
I enjoy any IPA, that's my beer of choice, that is lower ABV. I like to have a couple of beers.
Name them. I know you like Detour.
I do, which is a great ale. There's others. There's too many to mention. This one I'm holding.
This guy's going to run for politics one day.
This one I'm holding, though, Sunnyside 3.9, I believe it is fantastic. That's my wheelhouse.
All right. What has been the most challenging aspect of your job?
I think we just talked about it.
Name one.
The misperception of the Ontario craft brewers, and then working with government, although we have a great partnership with them, can be painfully slow. So you have to be patient, because it can take you years to get something across the finish line, but you have to be on it every day.
See, I thought you were going to say the looking after or listening to 126 different opinions from the members, because I can't even imagine, like, you talk to one brewer, they have this opinion, another brewery, this opinion, this owner has another opinion.
Well, I've dealt with that in previous jobs I've had, being CEO of Golf Canada, when thousands of golf courses and golfers. Yeah. So I've dealt with that. I actually love hearing from craft brewers. I've had the privilege of visiting most of the member breweries in Ontario. The success stories, it's incredible. I love meeting these people, hearing their stories, and I like a chance to talk about the OCB.
And if anyone's listening to this right now, why not invest in the OCB from a volunteer point of view, and take Scott out for a week and film him going to all these breweries across the province? That would be something fun. Name your celebrity doppelganger.
Oh boy,
Ray Bork, I got it.
Ray Bork. I think I mentioned I spent some time with the International Management Group.
Yeah, tell me the story.
Well,
tell everyone the story. I know the story.
How many seconds do I have?
Oh, you got it. Keep going.
Okay, so back when I was IMG, Brett Hall was one of our clients.
I hear he likes to have a cocktail now and then.
No comment. I took him. I escorted him as his agent to. I wasn't his agent, but worked for his agency. His agent actually couldn't make it, so I took him to the NHL All-Star Awards at the Harbor Castle. We both got tuxedos on. He wants to go out for a drink afterwards. We go to Alice Fazzuli's on King. We're sitting at the bar in tuxedos. Brett Hall, good-looking, charismatic.
Young guy.
You know who Brett Hall is, right? Yeah. So a lineup of people coming to get his autograph. He ordered a couple of bottles of Dom Perignon. We're having some drinks. I signed a lot of Ray Bork autographs that night. So there's people who have something probably in the walls in their basement that they got an autograph from Ray Bork. It wasn't Ray Bork.
The president of the Ontario Craft Brewers.
My hair was a little different back then. I was a little bit younger, and I got Alec Baldwin a lot too. Those are the two.
Yeah. So did you ever hear the Brett Hall? I know this is rapid fire, but did you ever hear the Brett Hall? He comes to training camp overweight one time. And they said, how high can you reach your arms? And he goes, I don't know, but I can do it 60 times a year. And that's a pretty good one.
It is good. I've heard that one.
Name a person in the industry that inspires you.
I kind of anticipated this question, and I'm going to be the political answer. Yeah. All of you. I have never been an entrepreneur. I have always had, a job with a guaranteed salary, sometimes benefits, some security. When I think of the 340 craft brewers who have followed their passion, invested their life savings in a lot of cases to invest in their dream, those are people I really admire.
Good. I'm not one of them. Best hangover cure.
Well, I would say knowing your limit and staying within it.
Oh, Jesus, another political.
Drinking 3.9% beer when you like to have a few pops on the weekend, and a lot of water.
And do you ever drink when you're around politicians?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, that's it for the Rapid Fire with Scott. Scott Simmons, the president of the OCB. It was a pleasure to have you here in Mike Boone's basement for episode 10 of Between Two Fermenters. I'm glad we got the chance to talk about retail, about membership of the OCB, some misconceptions, and just the OCB in general. And I think the more breweries in this province that get to know who you are and what you stand for and what the OCB stands for, we're just going to keep growing the membership into one of the strongest, I don't want to say lobbyist groups, but strongest advocacy groups in this country. So I appreciate you coming on. We're going to go to an ad, and then we're going to come back to Around This Industry. Thank you very much, Scott.
Cheers.
Hey guys, it's Sadie here from Great Lakes Brewery with some really exciting news coming for you this summer. We're happy to announce that on August 24th, we're going to throw our first ever large-scale craft beer fest right here in beautiful South Etobicoke. It's called Brewed for You Fest with 20 plus breweries and cideries, some of our closest pals in the industry. We're excited to have Shannock Road doing an amazing Celtic rock set, as well as my personal favorite, a 90s throwback set by the band Discman. Brewed for You Fest here at Great Lakes Brewery on August 24th. Go to greatlakesbeer.com for details.
Around the Industry.
So we covered a lot of the most pressing industry news with Scott. That recent announcement about retail and beer, wine, cider, and RTDs going to places like Costco and grocery stores that are going to be able to sell 24, 30 packs of beer. So that's the biggest thing that's happened in the industry over the last 2 weeks. We're really hoping to get some information from the government and through the OCB on what the next steps will be so that we can get out there as a collective, our industry collectively, to get out there and get our beer into these stores. Side Launch Brewery officially turned 10 years old a couple weeks ago or last week, and celebrated with the release of Pale Ale brewed by the original brewmaster, Michael Hancock. So Michael, who's been mentioned on this show a couple times, went back to brew the original Pale Ale recipe just in time for the 10th anniversary, and it was great to see him back at Side Launch. He sunk his heart and soul into that place, and even if it was for just one brew, it's nice to see him back there. And Justin from Side Launch welcoming him back there to brew that beer. So congrats on 10 years, Side Launch. And tickets are on sale for the inaugural GLB Brewed For You Festival. It's taking place October 24th. The one-day celebration of Ontario craft beer culture will feature the best beer, bands, and bites. I think they stole that from the TFOB line that Ontario has to offer, nestled in the heart of South Etobicoke. There are 2 sessions, lots of live music, tons of beer. I think there's going to be 15 to 20 different craft brewers. And head over to greatlakesbeershop.ca for more information. That's it. That's all, folks. Episode 10 with Scott Simmons, Mr OCB, has moved from the mash tun to the fermenters. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Scott and appreciate all the work that the Ontario craft brewers do on behalf of all independent craft breweries in this province. Today's episode was fueled by cans of the crushable Great Lakes Lager, which you can find all over Ontario at the beer store, LCBO, select grocery stores, and online shop at Great Lakes for $50. Scott drank Sunnyside Session IPA, which you can do the same thing, find it all over Ontario. You can visit the brewery at 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard in Etobicoke, or grab some delicious eats and fresh pours at our brew pub at 11 Lower Jarvis Street in Toronto. If you have any content you'd love to hear us discuss on the show, or just want to tell us what you're drinking, drop us a line at podcast@greatlakesbeer.com. Until next time, please remember to keep tipping your glass of fresh GLB in the right direction. Supporting local never tasted so good.
To learn more about what's happening at Great Lakes Brewery, visit greatlakesbeer.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, or follow Great Lakes Beer on your favorite social media platforms.